introductions first of all anyway. Hello, welcome to this webinar today on generating more revenue with fewer barriers, unlocking the BD blueprint with HireAra. Thank you all so much for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jackie Sherlock and I'm the product marketing manager here at Mercury. I'm joined by the lovely Emily German, who will be looking after our questions, our answers, our chat. So if you have any of those, you can use either the Q&A function or the chat function, and Emily will be coordinating throughout and interjecting when there's a sensible place to do so. And then we're also joined by Tom Vos from HireAra. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so Tom, I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders from HireAra. We are AI-powered candidate presentation tool. Probably famous, I'd like to think, for being the kind of first mover on generative AI in the space. It's kind of just like the timing of when we were founded. But we've had kind of 3 years now, coming up to 3 years of just playing and building with generative AI. And I'm just an all-round AI expert. I just love it. So hopefully, I hope I have something I could share and kind of take you through the product. Yeah, all round just kind of like AI nerd, really. That's me.
I was getting the word geek in my head, but nerd works just as well, I think. Well, I think you're in very good company around here. We're all turning into AI nerds and AI geeks at the moment, I think. So I think you've got some slides. If you wouldn't mind sharing the screen.
Yes.
I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to talk about basically why we're here, why we're talking about BD. And then I'm going to hand over to Tom, who's going to look at how you can increase productivity and revenue, doing more, doing it quicker, getting better results, all without compromising quality. So if you could just go to the first slide, please, Tom, that's great. Thank you. So for anyone on this call, I don't need to tell you how important BD is. You're here, so you know it's important. That's why you're joining us this afternoon. But really, there's never been a more important time to be specking out candidates and getting them into jobs. And you're looking at leaving no stone unturned in expanding your client base and securing those long-term contracts that really underpin your financial scalability and stability and sustainability going forward in what, let's face it, is a bit of a tumultuous market at the moment. And really, it helps you to differentiate your business in a very, very competitive and very, very crowded landscape. So it helps you stay ahead of hiring trends, technological advancements, and those economic shifts that we're seeing more and more at the moment. So that's kind of the background as to why we're here today. Tom, if you'd like to just talk us through what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, I'll probably have some questions as we go along, or if not at the end. And then at the very end, we'll have some time for Q&As from people here as well. Um, can everyone else hear? We've just had somebody in the chat say that they're unable to hear. So could somebody give a thumbs up? Yeah, okay. It might just be that first user who's having a problem. Okay, thank you all very much for that. Okay, so Tom, I'm going to hand over to you if you can talk us through what you've come to say today.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good. So I guess I'm here to talk through how what we're seeing from our customers who kind of best use HireAra to spec out candidates and use their kind of candidate as a tool to grow their business, really. Um, so I'm actually going to start with a couple of questions. So this is always the risky bit, technical issues. But if everyone could pull out their phone, scan their QR code, and tell me, where do you see the benefits of AI? Do you see them, are you kind of viewing them as being a mechanism to take cost out of your business? Potentially, it's a way of doing more with less, and that leads to headcount savings. Do you see it as a revenue tool, that it's something that you can actually use to drive that real top line growth? Or also interesting to know, which is a kind of a valid response, are you a cynic who maybe views it as like a type of marginal gain that actually isn't going to really move the needle here? Um, Interesting so far looking at this data. I'll give it a couple of minutes for everyone else just to pull out their phones and get in. Hopefully, quite a seamless. I'm really surprised. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, yeah. Revenue tool. I actually thought it flipped there. I'm glad we're pretty much unanimously of the same view. I view AI as an absolute revenue driver. It basically, and we've got quite a lot of data which I can go through as well, which shows that the benefit of AI is it actually allows your team to do more with less. I think HireAra is actually a really good example of this, where we're still only a tiny team of, I think we're just 15 people now, and we've been able to grow so quickly and grow to acquisition very, very fast with a team of 15 because we have built our business around using AI and leveraging AI to do everything. We're just a natively AI first company. And I'll come to kind of what that looks like in a sec. But yeah, I'm quite glad to see the audience is kind of the same view there. And then second follow-up question. So I think you'll probably just need to scan this QR code again. Do people on this call, do you feel like specking is working for you as a kind of BD strategy? Again, this will be just really interesting for me to kind of like frame the conversation down the line. And I hope if I've done anything looking at this answer, if I've done anything well by the end of the session, I hope at least we'll have given some kind of new ideas and new techniques you can try in kind of like running a specking process. A couple of minutes to add a couple more answers in there. Cool. So pretty balanced this one, definitely more balanced than the AI one. So interesting to see that. Cool. So I've got a couple of slides now that I'll run through. I'm really going to try and not be kind of deaf by PowerPoint. And actually, I'll get to kind of an interactive demo of HireAra in a second. But just bear with me on a couple of slides. We have this kind of like candidate presentation iceberg that we think of. That when people often think of the process of candidate presentation, CV formatting is the first thing that comes to mind. And frankly, it's an absolute ball ache. That actually, where HireAra came from is I spent 2 days job shadowing someone at a big international PLC and sat next to this consultant who was formatting CVs. And he described CV formatting as the part of, not just the part of his job he hated the most, the part of his life he hated the most. And yeah, that story really was what gave us the idea and actually made us decide to actually, let's take a risk, let's start a business here. But it's not just that. It's also the time that your consultant spends specking, drafting emails, sales sequences, writing covering notes, drafting emails. Actually, when you look at this overall process, the overall process of like anything written to a candidate presentation, it's probably your most manual process in your business, and it's admin that's stopping your sales team from selling expensive salespeople, often not the best written content. Kind of, firstly, the number one thing to do is just get them out of this admin and free them up so they're in a position to spend more time on the phone, more times building relationships, all the kind of like stuff that you'd expect good salespeople to be doing. But also, like, I think actually when you look at the revenue impact of candidate presentation, there's a reason why companies invested so much time doing this process manually. And just a couple of data points, I think, which play to that, that there's now like so much generic kind of like marketing brand data research, which shows that people build their first impression of anything within seconds. And that impression goes into kind of that very quick perception of quality. Is this candidate a good fit? Are you a premium supplier? Are you a market leader? Do you make life easy for your client? And they're the kind of like subconscious parameters people build up very, very quickly based on just the kind of presentation style. We've actually seen some phenomenal data with one of our customers, Contract Scotland, up north, where they A/B tested the impact of sending out CVs from HireAra, where in the A version of the test, it was just the kind of the way that they used the format, which was basically just a head and tail on the CV, just a logo, took out the candidate's contact information. And then the B test was sending a fully redesigned presentation content style from HireAra, which just looked stunning, looked amazing. And then the data we got from that study was that changing nothing other than the style of presentation actually led to a 1 in 5 increase in interviews for the same candidate. So all we've changed there is the style of presentation, and just the style, the way the information was laid out, basically got 20% extra interviews. So that's the most basic. Before we even get into the specking side, like the easiest thing you can do here is just get yourself a guaranteed good first impression from how you submit your candidates, which are basically your product. It's your IP, right? In that kind of the packaging for your IP. Then moving on to specking, like if so the 40% at the front who said specking isn't working for you, there's kind of this got this like 5-step framework that we think of what actually leads to a spec CV working very well. And it's the same with, I think this is quite a generic concept to most like kind of outbound outreach processes, that if you lead with value, so the way that you present your candidate is in directly solving a pain point for the customer. And that pain point comes from, seeing that they've got a job description open, seeing they've got an open job, they've not been able to fill it, seeing that there's a pain point, they're looking for this person, you've been able to solve this need that you know that they have. And it's then personalizing your submission to speak to that pain point. And now the way that AI works, like there is no reason, there's no excuse almost to not have hyper personalized content, which then speaks to that value point that you're solving. And then because it's personalized, it's relevant to the candidate. And then you make it low friction. And hopefully as part of the demo, I'll show some of the new innovative ways that we have of specing a candidate, which just goes to reduce friction on that feedback process for customers. So those 4 steps, and then you combine that with luck, and ultimately with outreach, there's a massive luck portion, and luck comes from quantity, quality, and then being in the right place at the right time. I think there's absolutely no reason why specing CVs should not be the most effective way of growing your business. And yet, like that as a concept seems so simple, but it's often done so badly. And I've just attached like a screenshot of just 3 messages emails I received a couple of weeks ago when we were hiring SDRs. And the qualities of spec that I receive is just genuinely so low that it's a really long email. It's one channel. It's maybe just one follow up. I never receive a phone call. I never receive like a LinkedIn message off the back of the spec. And okay, to be fair, these ones are personalized, so they had that going for it. But there's just no differentiation in this approach at outreach to me. So why is there ever an incentive for me to kind of to respond to these messages? The bar is pretty low, I think, to kind of do a good job on the spec process. And so that's kind of like the kind of framework of like how we think about candidate presentation. I've got just kind of 2 slides now just to talk you through how HireAra works before I get into the actual like visual presentation and what this actually looks like in reality. I'll pause there for a second before we move on. Jackie, are there any kind of questions related to the spec side of it, or any questions at this point?
I've got a couple of questions. So I was wondering about, I know that there's a little bit of hesitancy about AI and candidate data. I presume that none of that is ever used to train AI models or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have pretty much, the highest enterprise data security standards. No
Yeah,
data is used in training. It's all on private servers. It's not publicly accessible. It's kind of the equivalent of like sending data over email. That the data is held in some data center, but it's secure, and there's no
yeah.
real difference as long as you go through all the correct, data protection agreements, GDPR risk assessments, all of that sort of thing. There's no real difference to having your candidate data stored in your CRM versus processing it for AI. I think we've actually just launched an AI charter. I think for HireAra, one of the most like fundamental principles that we have is that our AI always works in the candidate's favor, because your incentives are aligned with the candidates, right? That we are helping you create content about the candidate to help them get a job ultimately. So there's never really a scenario where that's not going to benefit the candidate. So we're kind of, I guess, pretty relaxed on not relaxed on the data security. I think there shouldn't really ever be an issue with the data security and the AI processing of candidate data.
Right, thank you. And also, why do you think it is that so many recruiters are struggling with that consistency of specking candidates out effectively? Do you think it's a problem with the data, a, a problem with the amount of time that they have to do things in, or do you think it's something else?
It's a really good question. And I remember back when we started, and that story where I was sat on the floor at a big PLC, like chatting these recruiters. Um, I remember the quote which was like, I've literally not sent out these candidates for interview. I've not submitted them because I just can't be bothered to format their
Mm.
CVs. And it's just like it's such a horrible admin job in the way of selling that it's very easy put off that task, I think.
Yeah.
So then when you then move to a scenario or a process where it's a couple of clicks and it's done, and all of a sudden it's generated sales sequences, it's generated landing pages in one click, bit of a sneak preview of what I'm going to show in a second. I think you just remove admin barriers, and you just you're just basically giving a tool to your salespeople, which helps them just do more work in less time. And then link back to the data question we asked up front, I fundamentally think that's why AI is a revenue tool, not a cost saving tool, because it's about giving someone a tool which allows them to 3 or 4x their actual capacity and do 3 or 4 times the amount of work in the same time as what they were doing 1x level of work before.
Great, thank you. I think that leads us nicely into you showing us a bit more about what HireAra can do.
Cool, perfect. So we are fundamentally a content platform, and we give you all the tools to basically make world-class candidate presentation the norm, the default. In its most basic form, it's creating a formatted CV, your kind of standard client submission. It's also creating spec CVs, so very nice BD optimized content, writing profiles, candidate one pages, drafting mail short, like outbound sequences, filling in client cover sheets. There's just like any piece of written content, your consultants spend time writing about the candidate. We are the platform that you can use to automate that. And then there's no point of having content without distribution. So again, in its most basic form, you can export all the content as PDF, very straightforward. You can then also create candidate landing pages. And then that's the part of the demo, which I'll show in a second, which are amazing for speccing. They just give you so much more data and analytics than you've ever had before. And then all of this is perfectly seamlessly integrated into Mercury. So the distribution element can be saved to Mercury, push all the content back into Mercury, all the data goes back into Mercury, and the consultants don't need another login. It all happens really seamlessly from the candidate's record within the platform. So the kind of like key takeaways before I go into the demo, if the most basic level is if your consultants are doing this manually, you've just got to, like, it's just not a good use of human time. There's so many better things that your consultants could be doing, but it's not really about saving time. It's about in a couple of clicks giving your consultants the tools to turn that like world-beating candidate into an absolute revenue magnet, which allows you to kind of grow your business and really lead your kind of outbound growth strategy with value. So hopefully over to the exciting part of the platform. So this is HireAra. I'm showing you standalone purely because it's just a little bit easier for me to demo. And I'm on a small screen today, but this entire process happens seamlessly within Mercury. I've just dragged and dropped a candidate into the platform. What I'm going to do at the same time is just copy and paste an example job description that I've got set in. So what this is doing is back to my kind of bullet point about speccing. I'm personalizing this submission, the candidate content to the job that I'm submitting them to by putting the job description into there. And there's a lot more data that we can put into this as well for personalization. Then I'm just going to choose an existing template, which is set up on the platform. And I'm going to start by speccing this candidate on a landing page. So the consultants don't spend time thinking about brand. They're certainly not like converting a PDF to a Word doc. You know what happens when it loses its formatting? You then spend 10 minutes putting new lines in and it jumps all over the place. A horrible process. So they just select from a list. They take 10, 15 seconds for it to load. And then in a couple of seconds, the platform will have returned that first draft of the spec profile, created as a landing page, and with a bunch of cool stuff embedded in it. So here we go. Candidate's original CV on the left-hand side. We've got this new version that I've created on the right-hand side. You can see the AI has stripped out all of the like PII data, anything which could be used to identify the candidate, even as far as the level of like removing their name and then just like summarizing them in one line related to the job description. So right away, the very first thing that the client will see when they open this is, hey, this candidate actually could be a good fit for my role. And if it isn't quite right, it's literally just a few clicks to just type away. But you've got the AI set up, it's done that draft, it's already got your brand on there, already logoed, already got your colors. So the consultants just spend a couple of seconds scanning through this, checking they're happy with the quality and the substance, and then they're good to go. Again, super easy to edit, super easy to click anywhere. I've got an AI assistant in text, so just very quick and easy to make those edits. Then when we talk about the fourth bullet point on my kind of spec framework, is about being seamless. And what you'll see here is I have actually then embedded my diary into the presentation of this candidate. So when I create a landing page for the candidate, and I'm going to say spec to Steve, um, I'm going to create a link for Steve, 30 days, and I'm just going to copy this into an incognito mode. And what I've done is I've now created a unique link to Steve to this candidate's profile. So the second Steve clicks on this link, opens it, I'm going to get a notification saying, hey, Steve is looking at your spec. Maybe use that as a BD trigger to pick up the phone and check in and see what he thinks. As it goes through this, you can see the exact summary is all personalized to the job description, super relevant, touching on the pain points about the candidate's experience in strategic M&A, financial leadership, so on and so on. I like the candidate, I'm interested. All of a sudden, at the bottom, okay, the next step for me is so simple. It's one click, put in my information, put in my email address, and then I can book a meeting directly in my diary, sync up to my diary, just using a meeting, book a link. Um, so yeah, that is how, and that entire process has taken me, I'm talking it through, but even whilst I've been speaking it through, it's probably taken me 30 seconds to get this really nice interactive, digital, kind of like almost like a B2C version of like a buying experience about the candidate ready to go. Do you think if I'm a consultant, I can scale this and I can do 5, 6, even 10 times the amount of BD that I was able to do in the time it would take me to get one profile before? And then the quality is just so much higher. So I think the takeaway on like the overall like one line summary on I think on how to really grow your business using specs is improve the quality of your spec CVs, and absolutely a platform like HireAra can help you do that, and also improve the quality. You've got to be in kind of sorry the quantity. You've got to be in the game to win it, and then the more work you do, the more candidates you spec out, the more likely you are to get lucky. And quality and quantity, I think, is quite clearly like how you deliver success in that process.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I think we've got a question. Emily, would you mind
Yeah, of
coordinating the
course.
question?
So the question that's come in says that booking is only for the consultant. Is that correct? For example, it is not marked in Mercury as an activity against the candidate.
Yeah, it's just for the consultant.
Okay, amazing.
Uh,
I've also got a question, if that's okay. Because you're sending it as a URL link, does that cause any problems with sending that in email via spam and kind of the
Yeah,
marketer in me has to ask that?
yeah, it's a really good question. I think it depends on the client, but I think the place that we see this used very successfully is on LinkedIn. So having like a multi-channel outreach approach. So you could, for example, if you're trying to, so if you have the candidate, the hiring manager's LinkedIn, send a couple of emails, and then on HireAra, if you want it just to be a standard, like a standard document PDF. Again, it's one click to change the template, and then it's just more of a standard document. So typically, I think how we see that best used is maybe email or PDFs on email, and then for the lowest risk would then be using the website on LinkedIn. It also generates a very nice like social preview, and it helps increase the click-through rates. So I think it's not always like this the links don't cause spam, but if it is something you're concerned about, I'd probably recommend to kind of like maintaining it, keeping it on LinkedIn. But absolutely, we have clients who use it on email as well, and I don't think it causes a massive issue.
Amazing. That's it from the chat for now.
I'm just wondering about how many agencies do you see using this kind of landing page approach? Is it something that's becoming more and more popular, or is it still quite niche?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think we're seeing it. I think it's like almost post-COVID now. Like consumers and B2B buyers, which effectively hiring managers are, have just got so used to having such an incredible like consumer buying experience that
Mm.
if you know the expectation of if you go to your bank, have a beautiful app, you have nice glossy analytics, it just works. I think increasingly B2B buyers have the same expectation. So I think we're probably out of the phase of early adopters, and it's definitely into the phase of like mass market, mass adoption. I think that's probably where we are, kind of like setting the kind of new benchmarks in like what the new default is, what the average quality should be now in a submission.
And do you think this is kind of one of the ways that people can really differentiate themselves from the crowd? As we were talking about earlier, it's a really crowded, competitive marketplace. Is this one of the ways that you can do that, do you think?
Yeah, like absolutely. I think it's like being an early adopter in your field and making life easy for your clients. Like objectively, if you then allow your client to book in a meeting with you in one click, they've had to go to no extra effort. There's
Mm.
no friction for them to do that. I think clients like ultimately appreciate you going out of your way to make their life easy. Um, I think that is ultimately like what differentiation is just like everything you do being very, very good and you just being kind of recognized as being the premium supplier because you have that excellence in every part of your business. And obviously, candidate presentation is such a big part of an average recruitment business.
Mm. And all the templates and stuff that you were showing, is that something that the agencies or the businesses need to build themselves?
Yeah, so what we have on the site is basically a template builder, which is a really easy, like zero code way of just building out these templates. So, for example, this meeting booker thing, you just drag and drop it in from the left-hand side. If you
Okay.
wanted to include video, so we integrate with a bunch of video providers, you could host a video on the website, and then it could be like a Loom video or a Vidyard video of you talking through the candidate. It could be hosted an interview on there. So yeah, it's basically you just drag and drop stuff into the templates, set them live, and then that sets the brand which is available to the consultant. So it means that your consultants again don't spend time thinking about brand. You get that consistency, and but it's still really easy for you guys to kind of update and edit in the background.
Yeah, and the marketer in me is always keen on keeping the brand as consistent as possible. So I think anything that you can do to make that happen is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's answered the question that somebody raised in the chat as well about can the landing page be branded? So that's great. I've got a couple of more questions, but is there anything else you wanted to show before I ask those, Tom?
I think that's kind of it. I think there's maybe a few other bits that we can do to help a lot around. Again, it's just written presentation. So the landing pages, the email, so the landing pages, the CVs are one part of that. But then another part of that is just any other written content. So if you're then creating outbound sales sequences, and we have a really big update, which is actually going to make this a lot simpler in the future. If you're writing LinkedIn posts, even as far as like generating cold call scripts. So what
Mm.
this will do is it will analyze the job description, analyze your candidate, then suggest like what are the most like salient, what are the most interesting parts that your hiring manager is likely to be interested in, and just can be like a really good coach, maybe for kind of junior recruiters or people just starting out in their career, just to like really help them get over, I guess, writer's block and just kind of help coach them on the way. And we have on the cold call side, I can't say too much yet, but we have quite an exciting product on the way, which is probably going to launch in a couple of weeks. Really like help visualize and help people practice and then help people scale and expand their cold calling.
Oh, that sounds really exciting. It's sort of about warming up the coldness of those calls, isn't it? I
Yeah.
think. Okay, so I've just got a couple of other questions, if that's okay. So, what do you think is the biggest untapped opportunity for agencies coming up in the next 6 to 12 months when it comes to BD? Where do you see the future?
It's a really good question. And I think the future is absolutely moving into the autonomous side. So one thing that we're about to basically launch is, I think actually Mercury have a similar LinkedIn integration. That actually, it's almost like the agentic execution of your BD strategy. So can you have your consultants who go in and configure campaigns, and then the actual execution of that campaign happens autonomously without your consultants being involved? And then you kind of have your consultants who are almost acting as like almost like managers of different AI agents executing outbound strategies on your behalf. I think some of the stuff that we're working on, we're not a million miles away from that world happening. And again, I think it plays very nicely into what we're talking about up front, that because we have control of the outbound process, or we can guide the users because it's all AI based, and then the quality is very, very good. And then because you can execute the strategy 24/7, even when people are scaling. So even when people are sleeping, it scales very nicely. So you can really use AI to increase the quality of the outbound and then increase the quantity of the outbound strategy as well. I think there's some really nice new AI tools as well, which have been popping up, which really help you on that kind of lead identification process. So there's a tool called Venti AI. I'm not sure if anyone on the call has come across it, but a very nice like spec tool. which scans all open job postings, and then can tell you, hey, this job's been posted, high priority based on your ICP, based on the stress of the hiring manager, kind of go reach out to them. I think that very like a tool like Venti is very quickly going to become like the orchestration of your BD effort, which kind of guides your consultants and tells them where they should be prioritizing their effort.
That's really interesting. I think it's a really exciting time that we're in at the moment, and I'm looking forward to what's happening in the next 6 to 12 months. Um, just before we wrap up, how do people get in touch with you, Tom, if they want to find out some more information?
Yeah, so my email is thomas.vose@hireara.com. It can be a bit of a nightmare to spell, both my name and the company name. But also on LinkedIn, pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. So pop me a message on there.
Brilliant. Emily, I think we've got some stuff that we're going to put together in an email to send out after this webinar today. So we'll make sure we include your contact details in that as well. If we haven't got any more questions or any more things in the chat, I think we've come to a natural end point. Oh, it looks like we might have a Q&A. What was the AI tool mentioned? Venti AI, was it?
Yeah,
Tom? Yeah.
Venti with an E on the end. Venti, I think .ai or VENTE. Yeah.
Brilliant.
The other thing I'd just say is you can speak to your Mercury CSM or account manager about HireAra, and it's something that you can buy really seamlessly and kind of start a trial with, all from within Mercury. So other person to speak with would be your CSM as well. They'll be able to help you get started with HireAra.
Yeah, and I think we've got a bit of an offer at the moment, haven't we, as well? So we'll include all those in all that information in the email that we send out. Speak to your CSM, drop a line to Tom, drop a line to me. Any way you want to get in touch, please do. And Thomas, I just wanted to say, sorry, I called you Thomas. I got through the whole thing without sounding like your mom. But Tom, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've loved seeing what you've been showing